All right, everyone, now it's time for FISA Fallout number 2. Of course, I already spoke of Comey. Now we got to speak of the media response, the legacy media, the propagandist, slimeball establishmentarians, as well as the Dow Jones, just as a slightly funny aside that nonetheless totally does tie into the memo. Probably is a temporary sputter within the market as the result of it. When people realize this guy's not actually falling, then it, rises back up. But the number involved was funny because it was 666. So here's the thing. If you look at the entire media apparatus, for the most part, all you see right now is shilling, and it's even extended to like the Breitbart and Fox sort of side of the media that, that pretends to like Trump more than it actually does. You look at them talking about how wonderful McCain is right now, like John McCain and Jeb and all of these establishment Republicans from yesteryear, the 80s and 90s era GOP, the old men of the party, the sick man of politics. These rhinos come out to condemn Donald Trump and say, well, this is an attack upon democracy, it's an attack upon the FBI. No, it's not. It's a claim that wrongdoing occurred within the FBI. Why is it that any other time and that I can remember in history, any other time it was claimed that a bureau did something wrong, all you closed rank and said, well, we need to do something about this. This one time you say, no, it's a nothing burger, we're siding with the Democrats. You've been doing that for the last year. It's beginning to get a little bit conspicuous when John McCain and Lindsey Graham and all of these, Walsh and all these other morons will stand side by side with Chuck Schumer, cross-party, when you used to refer to the other party as the devil. Back when you did just the football team thing, it's like when Obama, what fucking bureau was it, was fucking around with progressive groups there. I mean, yes, with progressive and with far-right so-called groups. Now, I think wasn't it the IRS target? Wasn't it Lois Lerner's people that were targeting right-wing groups and also some progressives? Because progressive and neoliberal aren't the same thing, and people were mystified as to why they'd be there at the time. It was even used to try to exonerate it from being a political situation, because people fell into the false dichotomy and they said, well, it's okay if they targeted conservative groups because they also targeted a couple far-left groups. Neoliberals aren't far left. They were targeting ultimately the early burgeoning New Right movement along with the Bernie Sanders progressives. And it came from the DNC. Of course it did, because they don't want either of those groups displacing their corporate bank cocksucking, which is exactly what they do. Koch with a K, of course. The rhinos are still getting their money. The Koch brothers, they'll free some up for Trump, for some unknown reason at this point, but a lot of that money is going to go right into the pockets of people like John McCain. People still pretend that they're libertarians or something. No, it was funny. Katy this was like the greatest thing I saw on Twitter in the immediate wake of the FISA memo. Katy of NBC News comes out and makes a tweet. Oh, but remember, the original memo was actually paid for and compiled for a conservative op research against Trump in the primaries. And this is what was pointed out to her over and over to the point where she deleted the tweet. I pointed this out too, and of course, now the tweet's not there. Someone must have archived it or something. I didn't, so I don't have it on there. The funny part was this. You're not differentiating between mundane opposition research, which is allowable, it's slimy, it's underhanded, that's politics, it's the way DC works. There's a difference between paying for opposition research and ultimately, by the way, getting a very shitty product for your money because it involves leaks of fake info to the media that are then recompiled into the same dossier. A bunch of stuff that's totally falsified, like the Russian hooker pee shower story. It's false. Trolling, what was it? Rick Wilson getting trolled, stuff like that. Like some of it was straight out of 4chan. It's monumentally funny. There's a difference between compiling a shitty and slimy dossier, and that same dossier getting funded by the DNC, making its way through the FBI before a FISA court and being used to grant a warrant to spy on people that are part of a presidential campaign. Those are two totally different situations. That's like saying that, oh, there's no difference between me stealing a car and running 10 people over and me stealing a Matchbox little $5 car from the local toy store. No, they're not comparable. They're not the same thing. They may involve the same fundamental principle of car-ness is involved. I think the average person would be able to tell the difference between those two events. You're acting as though, Katy and others, the fact that a conservative group funded the original op research somehow has something to do with the fact that it was then swept up by the Clintons and it was sent to the FBI, and people, knowing that it was not real, knowing that it had already been discredited, used it to gain a FISA warrant. Then we have people saying, well, that was only part of the grant of the FISA warrant. Okay, again, let me just reiterate this for the morons. It made its way before the FISA court as evidence despite being knowingly fabricated. The people who put it before the FISA court knew it wasn't even real. It should never have been included with evidence at all because it's not evidence of anything. And the warrant was granted. It was never questioned. Why are we seeing this fake material here? Never questioned. Several warrants were granted involving these same people that Jeff Sessions now is coming out and applauding, by the way. As wonderful, wonderful human beings. That's a little bit mysterious to some people. I'm not a fan of Sessions myself. I've made that clear. Being a decent judge of characters like him, he's just a jaded rhino moralist. So no, I'm not going to be a Sessions cheerleader here. I have called for him twice to be kicked out by Trump. I think Trump's just not kicking him out because, at least on the investigative side, he's doing his job. And he's like, well, that's basically what he's supposed to do. He can be a moron on every moral topic. He can be a moron when it comes to judging people. But at least he's doing what he needs to do, the bare minimum, so I don't have a reason to fire him. It'll look political, says Trump, so he backs off for a while. And then, in the wake of all the propaganda and confusion, the Dow dropped 666 points, posting its worst day in how long? I can't even remember, but 666. And so I had a field day with that. You have a glass of wine, and then you see that, that's mentioned, and it's like, And so people were pointing to it almost as a religious event, like Stephen King was tweeting. I was like, what have you done? Look, basically you've angered God or something. Because the left has embraced religiosity, there are probably people who will take this as a sign of the end times now. Well, that's the funny part. Either that or, the right wing might do the same thing. Like some crazy evangelical living out in some dilapidated barn in the middle of Wyoming, probably on their dial-up connection. They saw the news that the Dow was down in the wake of the FISA memo, and they said, it's good time to get to the root cellar because Satan must be coming. Trump is, Jesus. And so pretty soon he's going to have to battle Satan, who is obviously Ahmadinejad or Kim Jong-un, or maybe Vladimir Putin in the past would have been likened to the Antichrist. And the only difference between that right-wing evangelical and the nascent now evangelical left-wing voters, that the left-wing voter is rooting for the other. He's rooting for Ahmadinejad or Kim Jong-un, saying, no, they're Jesus, Trump is Satan, or Obama's Jesus, or something along those lines. So that was funny. But that's just a humorous aside. The story overall is not humorous. It was an open attempt to overthrow a legitimately elected president in the wake of, prior to that, an attempt to usurp democracy by conducting unlawful surveillance on someone who wanted to be the president of the United States, who at the time was a private citizen. Trump had never held any political office. He had no such title. Surveillance was certainly conducted on him vicariously. That's the whole point. When you're sweeping up accidentally information on American citizens when you're conducting your surveillance, or you're conducting surveillance on a foreign target who happens to talk to Americans, or on one American who's talking to other Americans. That other material, because of the way in which the NSA's gathering works, becomes then searchable. It's still part of that same overall data that can be gone through. Any individual with, the correct, clearance, any mid-level FBI or NSA or CIA agent, because of the expanded data sharing right before Obama left office, and you'll remember that he did that, remember? He said, all this data can be shared like cross-agency. He wanted the FBI to have that info, I bet. I think there's a reason for that. Yeah, you can share it with other agencies. Yeah, basically, so that it's basically the insurance policy. You want to create backups of it so that it can't be scrubbed too easily because it was improperly collected. You want it to be in a few extra areas so that if Trump gets out of line, you can nail him and get him out of office, is basically what they're saying. The problem, of course, being it doesn't look like they actually gathered enough data to accomplish that. Because, of course, by now, in the wake of the FISA revelation, you would think the immediate reaction would be a massive leak from loyalists, Clintonians, neoliberals within these agencies of any dirt that they had on Trump to try to totally screw him over. Basically a declaration of war on the President of the United States by the bureaucracy. I'm going to side with Trump on that. If something like that happens, if chaos breaks out, and all of a sudden we find that the government has been thrown totally topsy-turvy, I will side with Donald Trump on that. I say that as someone who's not a Republican or a conservative. So I'm going to side with the person who is legitimately elected, for which no evidence has been given by any of these agencies of any form of wrongdoing involving Russia. That claim has been made every day for the last year. No proof has ever been offered. But I do have evidence that the other side is slimy and doing shitty things, and that it involves a conspiracy which wraps several intel bureaus together with improper FISA usage. That to me is much more concerning than, oh, did Trump grab someone by the genitals years ago? Trump said something brash like he has a million times in his life already because he was involved with wrestling and the Stern universe and Miss USA and everything else under the sun. I'm not concerned about these things. I am very concerned when I see the legacy media, which I know to be making falsehoods on a daily basis, that I have personal experience with trying to smear me like a right-wing watch. I know them to be slimy. I'm not going to trust them. It's not going to happen. When they say don't worry about it, or it's a dud, you saw that I think it was the Los Angeles Times, that they're not exactly friendly towards Trump. They're the ones that were trotting out the Hillary Clinton can still do it sort of thing after the fucking election. They've done that several times. They're saying, oh, the Nunes memo is a dud, doesn't show anything, yawn, everybody go home, I'm getting tired. It's propaganda. It's bullshit is what it is. That's about all. Peace out.